The bank representative looked at me with wide eyes as I said the words I never thought I'd say. Freeze all 3 accounts immediately. My hands weren't shaking anymore. After 30 years of being the family ATM, after being called out of touch and told to stay out of grown-up decisions, I'd finally had enough. And what happened next? Well, let's just say my children learned very quickly that Mom wasn't as clueless as they thought. My name is Diane, and I'm coming to you from a place I never imagined I'd be, sitting in complete peace in my own home, finally living life on my own terms at 67 years old. Before we dive into this story, I'd love to know, where are you watching from today? Drop your location in the comments. There's something comforting about knowing we're all out here, sharing our experiences, learning that we're not alone in the battles we face with our own families. Now let me take you back to where this all started, because like most family disasters, this one didn't happen overnight. For 32 years, I was married to a wonderful man named Robert. He was a mechanical engineer, and I worked as a nurse at the county hospital until I was 60. Together, we built a good life. We weren't wealthy by any means, but we were comfortable. We had a nice 4-bedroom home in the suburbs, 2 cars that ran well, and most importantly, we had savings. Robert was meticulous about planning for the future. Every month, without fail, money went into retirement accounts, emergency funds, and a separate investment account. When Robert passed away 5 years ago from a sudden heart attack, I was devastated. We were supposed to travel together in retirement, supposed to grow old watching grandchildren play in the backyard. But life had different plans. Along with my grief, Robert left me something else: financial security. Between his life insurance, our savings, and my own retirement funds, I had just over $750,000. To some people, that might not sound like much, but to me, it represented decades of careful planning and sacrifice. It meant I could live comfortably for the rest of my life without worry. I have 3 children: Tom, who's 41, Lisa, who's 38, and Michael, who's 35. I love them more than anything in this world. I raised them to be independent, to work hard, to value family. And for years, I thought I'd done a decent job. Tom is a sales manager at a car dealership. He's always been charismatic, the kind of person who could sell ice to someone living in Alaska. Lisa works in marketing for a mid-size company, though she's changed jobs 5 times in 10 years, always looking for something better. Michael is in tech, or at least that's what he tells people. He's had a series of startups that never quite took off, always convinced the next big idea is just around the corner. After Robert died, my children rallied around me. They helped me with the funeral arrangements, stayed with me during those first terrible weeks, called me every day. I was so grateful to have them. But somewhere along the way, that support started to shift into something else entirely. It started innocently enough about 6 months after Robert passed. Tom called me one evening, his voice tight with stress. "Mom, I'm in a bit of a bind. The dealership's sales have been slow, and my commission this month is going to be terrible. Jessica and I need to make the mortgage payment, and we're about $1,500 short. Could you help us out, just this once?" Of course I helped. That's what mothers do. He was my son, and he promised to pay me back within 2 months. I transferred the money that same day. 2 weeks later, Lisa called. "Mom, you know that position I interviewed for? They want me, but it's in a different department, and they can't start me for another month. I'm going to have a gap in my paycheck. Could you spot me $3,000 to cover my rent and bills? I'll pay you back as soon as the new position starts." Again, I helped. My children were struggling, and I had the means to ease their burden. Then Michael showed up at my door with elaborate plans for his new app idea. "Mom, this is it. This is the one that's going to make it big. I just need $50,000 for development and marketing. Think of it as an investment. When this takes off, I'll pay you back triple." $50,000. I hesitated on that one, but Michael showed me charts and projections, testimonials from beta users, a whole presentation. He was so passionate, so convinced, and I thought maybe this is how I could help him finally succeed. So I wrote the check. That was 3 years ago. Tom never paid back the $1,500. Lisa's temporary loan turned into a regular monthly request, And Michael's app? It launched, got a few hundred downloads, and then disappeared into the void like all his other ventures. But the money kept flowing. Every month, someone needed something: car repairs, medical bills, credit card payments, a new laptop, dance classes for the grandkids, a small vacation to relieve stress, 500 here, 1,000 there, sometimes 5,000 at once. I kept a ledger. It's something Robert taught me. Always track your money. In 3 years, I'd given my children just over $280,000. The real problem wasn't the money, though. It was the attitude that came with it. I started to notice the change about a year ago. I'd make suggestions about budgeting, about cutting unnecessary expenses, about living within their means. The responses became increasingly dismissive. "Mom, things are different now than when you were working. You don't understand how expensive everything is." "That's old school thinking, Mom. You have to spend money to make money." We're not living in the 1980s anymore. The economy works differently. I bit my tongue. Maybe they were right. Maybe I was out of touch. After all, I'd been retired for 7 years. What did I know about the current job market or modern expenses? But then I started noticing other things. Tom drove a brand new BMW even though he claimed money was tight. Lisa posted pictures from a spa weekend while still owing me money from the previous month. Michael wore a Rolex and ate at expensive restaurants 3 times a week while supposedly bootstrapping his startup. When I gently mentioned these observations, the responses became sharp. "Mom, you need to let us live our lives. We're adults. We know what we're doing. Just because you and Dad lived like misers doesn't mean we have to." That last comment from Lisa stung. Robert and I hadn't lived like misers. We'd lived responsibly. We'd taken vacations, enjoyed nice dinners, bought quality things when we needed them, but we hadn't pretended to have money we didn't have. The incident that changed everything happened on a Saturday afternoon in late October. All 3 of my children came over for what I thought would be a nice family dinner. I'd spent all day making Robert's famous pot roast, homemade rolls, apple pie from scratch. The house smelled wonderful, and I was looking forward to an evening with my kids. Instead, they sat me down at my own dining room table for what they called a family meeting. Tom started. "Mom, we've been talking and we're worried about you." My heart jumped. "Worried? Why? I'm fine. The doctor says I'm healthy as a horse." "It's not your health," Lisa interjected. "It's your financial decisions." I blinked. "My financial decisions?" Michael pulled out a folder. An actual folder like this was a business presentation. "Mom, you're 67 years old, living alone in a 4-bedroom house that's way too big for you. Your property taxes are ridiculous. The maintenance costs are through the roof. You're hemorrhaging money on this place." "This is my home," I said slowly. "Your father and I bought this house 40 years ago. I raised you here." "Exactly," Tom said. "It's a family home and you're here alone. It doesn't make sense financially. We think you should sell." The room suddenly felt very cold. "Sell my home?" "Downsize to a nice apartment or a condo," Lisa said, using that fake sweet voice people use when they think they're being reasonable. "Something modern, low maintenance. You could free up a lot of equity." "Equity that you're just sitting on," Michael added. "It's not doing anything for you. You could invest it, make it work for you." I felt my face flush. "I'm perfectly comfortable managing my own finances, thank you, and I happen to like my home." "Mom, that's exactly the attitude we're talking about," Tom said, leaning forward. "You're stuck in old ways of thinking. The financial landscape has changed dramatically. There are opportunities now that didn't exist when you and Dad were building your retirement." "What kind of opportunities?" I asked, though I was beginning to understand where this was heading. Michael's eyes lit up. "I'm glad you asked. I've been talking to some people, serious investors, about a new venture. It's in the cryptocurrency space, but with a real-world application that—" "No," I said firmly. "I'm not investing in cryptocurrency." "See, this is the problem," Lisa said, actually rolling her eyes at me. "You hear cryptocurrency and you immediately shut down because you don't understand it. Mom, people are making millions in this space." "People are also losing millions," I countered. That's because they don't know what they're doing, Michael said. But I've been studying this for 2 years. I know the right moves to make. With a significant investment, say $100,000, we could turn that into $1 million in 18 months. No. Mom, I said no, Michael. I've already given you $50,000 that I never saw again. I'm not giving you another $100,000 to gamble with. The room went silent. Tom and Lisa exchanged glances. Mom, Tom said carefully, you need to understand that we're not asking you to give us anything. We're trying to help you make smart decisions with your money before you make mistakes that could jeopardize your future. Something about the way he said that made my stomach turn. What are you talking about? You're getting older, Lisa said. People your age sometimes make poor financial decisions. They fall for scams, or they're not as sharp as they used to be. We're just looking out for you. Are you suggesting I'm senile? My voice came out sharper than I intended. Of course not, Tom said quickly. But Mom, you have to admit you're not exactly a financial expert. You were a nurse. Dad handled all the investments when he was alive. Now you're trying to manage everything alone. And frankly, we're concerned you might not be making the best choices. The best choices, I repeated slowly. Like giving away nearly $300,000 to my children in 3 years? Michael actually laughed. Mom, that's called helping your family. That's called being a parent. Did you ever think that maybe we needed that money? That we were struggling? Struggling while driving new BMWs and taking spa vacations? Here we go again, Lisa muttered. Mom, you need to stop keeping track of every dollar we spend. It's controlling and unhealthy. I keep track because I'm the one providing those dollars, I said, feeling my blood pressure rising. And none of you have paid me back a single cent. Because we're family, Tom said, as if that explained everything. Families help each other. You're supposed to help us. That's what parents do. And what do children do? I asked quietly. The question hung in the air for a moment. Then Michael leaned back in his chair and said the words that would change everything. Mom, we're adults now. These are grown-up decisions, and honestly, you need to stay out of them. We know what we're doing with our lives and our finances. What we need from you is support, not judgment, and certainly not lectures about responsibility from someone who doesn't understand how the modern world works. Stay out of grown-up decisions, I repeated, feeling something cold and hard forming in my chest. Exactly, Lisa said, apparently missing the danger in my tone. We love you, Mom. We really do. But you need to trust that we're capable adults who can handle our own lives. Your job is to be our mother, not our financial advisor. Just keep supporting us the way you have been and let us make our own choices without the constant criticism. I looked at each of my children in turn. Tom, confident and entitled, Lisa, dismissive and superior, Michael, already dreaming of his next big score. And I realized something that should have been obvious months ago. They didn't see me as their mother anymore. They saw me as a bank, a convenient source of funding that came with minimal strings and no expectation of repayment. I see, I said quietly. Well, thank you all for your input. I'll certainly think about what you've said. They seemed pleased with that, assuming I'd been properly managed. They stayed for dinner, ate my pot roast, complimented my cooking, and left with smiles and kisses on the cheek. I didn't sleep that night. The next morning, I did something I'd never done before. I hired a private investigator. I know how that sounds. Spying on your own children seems like a terrible breach of trust. But they'd been lying to me. I was certain of it. The question was, about what? The investigator, a woman named Sarah who came highly recommended by my lawyer, was professional and discreet. I told her I needed to know how my children were actually spending their money. Were they really struggling, or was I being manipulated? It took her 3 weeks to compile the report. When she came to my house to present her findings, I made tea with shaking hands. Mrs. Patterson, Sarah began gently, I'm going to be direct with you because I think you can handle it. Your children are not in financial difficulty, at least not the kind they've been claiming. She opened her folder and showed me photographs and documents. Tom's salary at the dealership was actually quite substantial, over $90,000 a year plus commissions. His wife, Jessica, was a dental hygienist making $55,000. Together, they had a household income of nearly $150,000 annually. But they also had consumer debt of over $80,000, credit cards mostly. And I saw the receipts. Designer, clothes, expensive dinners, season tickets to sporting events, a timeshare in Florida they'd purchased on impulse. Lisa's situation was similar. She made $70,000 at her marketing job, but she had maxed out 6 credit cards and had taken out a personal loan for $25,000 to consolidate debt. She was living in an apartment that cost $2,500 a month when she could easily find something suitable for $1,500. Michael was the worst. His startup wasn't a real business at all. He had no actual product, no business plan, no investors besides me. The $50,000 I'd given him 3 years ago had gone toward maintaining his lifestyle. The Rolex, the expensive dinners, the designer apartment in the trendy part of town. He worked part-time at a tech support job making $40,000 a year and spent the rest of his time networking at expensive restaurants and bars, always certain his big break was coming. But here's what really broke my heart. Sarah had discovered they were planning something. She'd found emails. They were planning to pressure me to sell my house and move into a retirement community. They'd already researched facilities, talked to a real estate agent about listing my property. According to their calculations, my house would sell for around $450,000. After I paid off the remaining mortgage of $80,000, I'd have $370,000 in cash. They'd even divided it up already. Tom wanted $100,000 for a business opportunity. Lisa needed $80,000 to pay off her debts and start fresh. Michael wanted to officially invest $150,000 in his next venture. The remaining $40,000 would be enough to get me set up in a nice little apartment. They hadn't asked me. They'd just decided, and they were working together on how to convince me it was in my best interest. I sat in my kitchen holding that report, and I cried. Not because of the money, though that hurt. I cried because my own children, the babies I'd nursed and raised and loved, saw me as nothing more than an obstacle to their financial gain. I didn't make my decision in anger. I made it in clarity. For 3 days, I sat with the information Sarah had given me. I prayed about it. I journaled. I called my sister in Arizona and told her everything. And slowly, a plan formed. If my children wanted to treat me like a bank, then I would act like a bank. And banks have rules. I made an appointment with my financial advisor, a sharp woman named Patricia who'd been helping me manage my investments since Robert died. I showed her the investigator's report. "Oh, Diane," she said softly, "I'm so sorry." "Don't be sorry," I told her. "Just help me protect myself." Together, we restructured everything. First, we set up a trust with my lawyer. My house, my investments, everything went into it. I was the trustee, with my sister as the backup. The terms were clear. None of my children would inherit until after my death. And even then, the trust would evaluate whether they'd made reasonable efforts to become financially responsible. Then came the bank accounts. Patricia helped me understand that I'd been added to all 3 of my children's checking accounts over the years. Tom's when he'd bought his house, Lisa's during a previous financial crisis, and Michael's to help him establish business credit. They'd assured me it was temporary, just to help them get approved for things. It turned out those accounts were still active with my name on them. I had full access. More importantly, I had full authority. On a Tuesday morning in November, I walked into the bank and met with the manager, a kind man named George who'd known our family for years. "George," I said, "I need to freeze 3 accounts. Immediately." George looked uncomfortable. "Diane, are you sure? This is a big step." "I'm positive. I have legal authority on these accounts, and I'm exercising it. Freeze all transactions. No withdrawals, no transfers, nothing. This is going to cause problems with your children." "Good," I said. They told me to stay out of grown-up decisions. Well, this is a grown-up decision. Let them handle it. George processed the paperwork. Within an hour, all 3 accounts were frozen. Then I took it a step further. I called the credit card companies where I was listed as an authorized user or co-signer. I removed myself from everything. I called the phone company and canceled the family plan I'd been paying for. I called the insurance company and removed them from my auto insurance policy that had been giving them a family discount. I systematically cut off every financial connection that gave them access to my money or resources. Then I went home and waited. I didn't have to wait long. My phone started ringing at 2:47 p.m. Tom, I didn't answer. Then Lisa at 3:15. Then Michael at 3:30. Then all 3 of them calling over and over. I let it go to voicemail. Tom's message, "Mom, there's something wrong with my bank account. My card got declined at lunch. Can you call me back?" Lisa's message, "Mom, I tried to pay my electric bill and the payment wouldn't go through. There must be a mistake. Call me." Michael's message, "Mom, what the hell? My account is frozen. This is seriously messing up my day. Fix this." I didn't call any of them back that night. The next morning, Tom showed up at my door at 7:30 a.m. I was already awake, having my coffee in the sunroom. I opened the door and looked at him calmly. "Mom, what's going on? My bank account is frozen. Jessica couldn't pay for groceries yesterday. We had to borrow money from her mother." "How embarrassing for you," I said. He stared at me. "What?" I said, "How embarrassing that." "Must have been for you, having to ask someone else for money. What did you tell Jessica's mother? That you make $150,000 a year but couldn't buy groceries?" Tom's face reddened. "How do you know, Mom, that's private financial information?" "Is it? Because my financial information didn't seem very private when the 3 of you held a family meeting to discuss selling my house without my consent." The color drained from his face. "Who told you? We were just talking. We haven't done anything." "You divided up the proceeds," I said quietly. "You already decided how to spend my money, the money from my home, the home where I raised you." "Mom, we were just exploring options." "Did you ask me about these options?" "We were going to—" "When? Before or after you listed my house?" He stammered, unable to respond. "Let me be very clear, Tom. You told me to stay out of grown-up decisions, so I'm making a grown-up decision. I've removed myself from all your accounts. I've canceled all services I was paying for on your behalf. From this moment forward, you're on your own." "You can't do this." "I absolutely can. And I have. You're an adult making adult decisions, remember? So make them, without my money." "Mom, you're being irrational." "Am I? Let me tell you what's irrational, Tom. It's irrational to make nearly $150,000 a year and still need money from your elderly mother. It's irrational to buy season tickets and designer clothes while claiming you can't make your mortgage. It's irrational to treat your mother like an ATM machine and then act shocked when the ATM stops working. I can explain the debt." "I don't want explanations. I want you to leave." "Mom, please, leave, now. And tell your brother and sister they're not welcome here either until they can treat me with respect." Tom stood there for a moment longer, looking like I'd slapped him. Then he turned and left without another word. The next week was brutal. All 3 of them called constantly. They showed up at my door. They sent me text messages that ranged from apologetic to angry to manipulative. Lisa came by crying, claiming she was going to lose her apartment. I later found out from Sarah, my investigator, that she'd actually asked her landlord for an extension and gotten it. But she wanted me to think she was facing homelessness. Michael came by with a different approach. He was furious. He stood on my porch and yelled about how I was ruining his life, destroying his opportunities, sabotaging his future. He called me selfish and vindictive. He said I'd never supported his dreams. "You're right," I told him calmly through the closed door. "I never supported your dream of living off your mother while pretending to be an entrepreneur. That dream is officially dead." He kicked my door and left. Tom tried, reasoning. He came by with Jessica, thinking his wife might soften me. They sat on my porch. I wouldn't let them in, and told me they understood I was upset, but I was being extreme. They promised to pay me back every cent starting next month. They had a plan. They'd cut back on expenses. They'd be more responsible. Do you think I'm stupid? I asked them. You've had 3 years to cut back on expenses. You've had 3 years to pay me back. You never intended to do either. You intended to keep taking until I had nothing left. That's not true, Jessica protested. Tom, tell her that's not true. But Tom couldn't look me in the eye. They left. The worst part was the messages from my grandchildren. Tom and Lisa had clearly coached them. My 10-year-old grandson sent me a drawing with "I miss you, Grandma" written on it. Lisa's daughter left me a voicemail saying she didn't understand why Grandma was mad at Mommy. That almost broke me. But I called my sister and she reminded me, Diane, you're not punishing your grandchildren. You're teaching your children that actions have consequences. If Tom and Lisa have to explain to their kids why they can't afford something, that's on them, not you. She was right. 2 weeks into the freeze, something interesting happened. I got a call from Jessica's mother, Karen, who I'd always gotten along with nicely. Diane, she said, I think we need to talk. Tom and Jessica came to us asking for a $20,000 loan. They made it sound like you'd cut them off completely without reason, like you were being irrational and cruel. But I know you, and I know there's more to this story. I invited her over for coffee. I showed her everything, the ledger of money I'd loaned, the investigator's report, the emails about selling my house. Karen's face went through a series of expressions: shock, anger, disgust. That son of a... She caught herself. Diane, I had no idea. Tom made it sound like you'd lost your mind. Maybe I have, I said tiredly. Maybe I'm being too harsh. Too harsh. Karen shook her head firmly. Honey, you're not being harsh enough. When Tom and Jessica came to us begging for money, you know what they said? They said they needed it for a down payment on a rental property, an investment opportunity they couldn't miss. They weren't even honest about being in debt. My stomach turned. Karen continued. I'm calling Jessica right now. She's going to hear exactly what I think of this situation. And Diane, don't you dare feel guilty. Those 3 need to grow up, and if it takes losing access to your money to do it, so be it. After Karen left, I sat in my kitchen feeling something I hadn't felt in weeks. Validated. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't cruel. I was simply refusing to be used anymore. 3 weeks after I froze the accounts, all 3 of my children showed up together. I saw them through the window, standing, on my porch, clearly having coordinated this ambush. I almost didn't open the door, but I realized we needed to have this conversation eventually. I let them in, but didn't offer them seats. Mom, Tom started, clearly elected as the spokesperson. We need to talk about this situation. What situation? I asked coolly. You know what situation. You've frozen our accounts, canceled our phone service, removed yourself from our insurance. You've cut us off completely. I've stopped enabling you, I corrected. There's a difference. We're your children, Lisa burst out. How can you do this to us? How could you do this to me, I countered. How could you take nearly $300,000 from me and never pay back a cent? How could you plan to force me to sell my home so you could split the proceeds? How could you look me in the eye and claim to be struggling while spending money on luxuries? You had a private investigator follow us? Michael was incredent. That's a massive invasion of privacy. You planned to sell my house without my knowledge. My voice rose for the first time. You don't get to talk to me about privacy. We weren't actually going to do it without talking to you first, Tom said weakly. Really? Because those emails said otherwise. They said you were working on the best approach to convince me, the best way to overcome my resistance. You treated me like an obstacle, Tom. All of you did. Silence fell over the room. Finally, Lisa spoke, her voice small. We didn't mean it like that. Then how did you mean it? No answer. Let me tell you what's going to happen, I said, my voice steady now. I will not give any of you another cent. Not a loan, not a gift, nothing. You will not inherit my house. I've set up a trust that evaluates financial responsibility before distributing assets. If you want anything from me when I'm gone, you'll need to prove you can manage your own finances first." "You can't be serious," Michael said. "I'm completely serious. Additionally, until each of you can prove you've taken financial responsibility seriously, and I mean actually seriously, not just promising to do better, I don't want a relationship with you." "You're choosing money over your own children?" Lisa's voice broke. "No," I said firmly. "You chose money over your mother. You saw me as a source of funding, not as a person. You told me to stay out of grown-up decisions while refusing to make responsible decisions yourselves. You wanted me to trust you while you planned to betray that trust." "Mom, we made mistakes," Tom said, "but completely cutting us off—" "I'm not cutting you off. I'm offering you something better than money. I'm offering you the opportunity to stand on your own 2 feet, to learn to budget, to sacrifice, to work hard for what you want. The lessons your father and I tried to teach you, but that you never had to learn because I kept bailing you out." "This is punishment," Michael said bitterly. "No," I replied. "Punishment would be reporting the fraud Lisa committed when she told me she needed money for medical bills, but spent it on a vacation. Punishment would be telling all your friends and colleagues exactly how financially irresponsible you've been. This isn't punishment. This is me finally treating you like the adults you claim to be." I pulled out 3 envelopes I'd prepared with my lawyer. "I'm giving each of you these," I said. "Inside is a proposal. If you want to repair our relationship, here's what needs to happen. First, you'll meet with a financial counselor. I've already arranged and paid for 3 sessions each. Second, you'll create a realistic budget and stick to it for 6 months. Third, you'll pay back at least 10% of what you owe me." "10%?" Michael sputtered. "That's— For you, Michael, that's $5,000. Over 6 months, that's less than $1,000 a month. If you can't manage that, then you've proven you have no intention of ever paying me back." "And if we do all this," Tom asked, "then we can slowly rebuild our relationship. I'll meet you for coffee. We can have Sunday dinners again. I can see my grandchildren regularly, but there will be boundaries. No more asking for money. No more expecting me to solve your financial problems. No more treating me like a safety net while you make reckless decisions." "And if we don't?" Lisa asked quietly. "Then you've made your choice. You'll have chosen your pride and your lifestyle over your relationship with your mother." I handed them the envelopes. "The choice is yours," I said. "You told me to stay out of grown-up decisions. Well, this is a grown-up decision. Make it wisely." That was 4 months ago. Tom and Jessica were the first to comply. It took them a month of angry phone calls and bitter texts, but eventually they met with the financial counselor. They started sending me $200 every 2 weeks. Not much, but consistent. Last week, Tom called and asked if we could meet for lunch. We did. It was awkward at first, but we talked. Really talked. He apologized. A real apology. Not a sorry you're upset non-apology. He admitted they'd been taking advantage of me. He told me the counselor had opened his eyes to how out of control their spending had gotten. Lisa took longer. She was angry for weeks, posting passive-aggressive things on social media about family betrayal and blood being thicker than water. But eventually, her daughter's 11th birthday came up, and Lisa called me crying. Not because she needed money, but because she realized her daughter was asking why Grandma wasn't coming to her party. She met with the counselor the next week. She's working 2 jobs now to pay down her debt. She's moved to a smaller apartment. And last month, she sent me her first payment, $500, with a note that said, "I'm sorry, Mom, for all of it." Michael hasn't responded. He's still living in his expensive apartment, still posting about his next big venture on social media, still convinced he's one break away from massive success. He told Tom I'm dead to him, that he doesn't need a mother who would abandon him like this. It hurts. I won't lie about that, but I also know I did the right thing.